All right, let's take a trip, you and me. We're gonna go way, way back, like 2,500 years, to see something amazing happen. We're gonna see the exact moment Western science was born. This is the story of how we, as a species, went from explaining the world with stories about gods to explaining it with, well, with our own minds. It's the leap from myth to reason.
You know, for most of human history, if you saw a volcano erupt or felt an earthquake, you wouldn't ask what caused that. You'd ask, who caused that? And the answer? It was always gods, right? Monsters, angry deities, the whole 9 yards. But then, something shifted, something big. So what was it? What was that little spark that just completely lit up a whole new way of thinking?
So here's our game plan. First, we'll dive into that world run by myths. Then, we'll be there for the moment the first big philosophical question gets asked. We'll see how that one question just exploded into this whole new way of thinking. And we'll even check out some of the practical, real-world wisdom that came with it. And finally, we'll connect the dots and see why any of this stuff still matters to us today.
Okay, so first things first. To really get just how huge this revolution was, we've got to understand the world it completely upended. For the ancient Greeks, the universe wasn't, a machine with rules and laws. Nope, it was more like a giant cosmic stage for a never-ending soap opera starring the gods. So let's take the poet Hesiod, writing way back around 700 BCE. He says in the beginning there wasn't a big bang. There was chaos, just this big, empty nothingness. And out of that nothingness popped the first divine beings. And get this, they were both places and ideas, like Gaia, who was the earth, and Eros, who was love itself. So in this way of thinking, the world wasn't made of something. It was literally born from gods.
And that was pretty much how you explained, well, everything. You want to know why the sky and the earth are separate? Oh, that's easy. It's because the god Kronos attacked his dad, Uranos. Why do we have seasons? Simple. It's all because of a messy divine custody battle over a kidnapped goddess. See the pattern here? Every single thing that happened in nature was just another scene in this crazy cosmic family drama.
Now, at about the same time, there was this other, more mystical group called the Orphics, and they had a different take. For them, your soul was this little divine spark, like a piece of a god. But the catch, it was trapped inside your physical body, kind of like a prison sentence. So the whole point of life wasn't to figure out how the world works, but to purify your soul so you could finally break out of that bodily jail.
So, you see the two sides shaping up here, right? On the one hand, you've got this world explained by gods with moods and agendas. But on the other hand, this totally radical new idea was starting to bubble up. The idea was, what if the world isn't a story? What if it's a system? A giant puzzle that we could actually solve, not by praying to the gods, but just by using our own brains.
And this incredible new way of thinking didn't come from some quiet temple or fancy palace. Nope, it came from the loud, messy, multicultural port cities of Ionia. That's on the coast of what we now call Turkey. And it's here that a handful of thinkers started asking a question that was about to change the world forever.
So let's zoom in on one city in particular, Miletos. Now, Miletos was a major hub. It was a crossroads of trade, which means it was also a crossroads of ideas, with people coming in from Egypt, Babylon, all over the place. And when you're constantly bumping into people with totally different beliefs, it kind of makes you start to question your own, right? Well, it's in this exact melting pot that the first hero of our story, a guy named Thales, gets to work.
See, Thales and the guys who followed him, they just weren't interested in the whole which god did what thing anymore. They were obsessed with a totally new idea, a concept they called the arche. Think of it like this. What's the universe's one single ultimate ingredient? If you could break everything down, rocks, trees, stars, you, what's the fundamental stuff you'd be left with?
And Thales, he actually came up with an answer. And it was so simple, but at the time, it was absolutely world-shaking. He looked at the world around him, and he said, everything is water.
Now, I know what you're thinking. Water? Really? And yeah, it sounds a little basic to us now. But the revolutionary part wasn't the answer itself. It was how he got there. It was all based on observation. He saw that water is crucial for all life. He saw it can be a solid, a liquid, a gas. He even came up with this idea that the Earth is just floating on a giant sea. And earthquakes? That's just the world getting rocked by the waves. The key thing here, the absolute game changer, is that he was trying to explain it with a natural cause, not just saying, oh, the god Poseidon must be angry again.
But here's where it gets really, really cool. The most amazing part of this whole new philosophy thing wasn't Thales's answer. It's what happened right after he gave it. His own students, they immediately started picking it apart, questioning it, trying to make it better. And that is where the really big leap happens.
I mean, this is the kind of critical thinking that philosophy is all about. It's a great idea, Thales, but it's got a few holes, right? Like, okay, if absolutely everything is made of water, how do you explain fire? You know, its literal opposite. But see, this wasn't about tearing Thales down. It was about building on his idea. It was the next logical step.
So Thales' own student, a guy named Anaximandros, he steps up to the plate, and his thinking was brilliant. He realized, hey, if the basic stuff of the universe is any one thing we can see and touch, like water or air or whatever, it's never going to be able to explain its opposite. So he figured the ultimate ingredient must be something we can't see, something beyond our world. He called it the apeiron, the boundless, the infinite, the totally undefined stuff that everything else comes from.
Okay, I really want you to appreciate what just happened here, because this is one of the biggest mental jumps in human history. We just went from a physical thing you can hold in your hands, water, to a completely abstract idea you can only think about, the apeiron. This is it. This is the birth of metaphysics, the part of philosophy that asks those really huge questions about reality that you can't just answer by looking around.
But you know, this whole revolution in thinking wasn't just about cosmic ingredients and what the stars are made of. At the exact same time that these guys were asking, what's the world made of? Another group was asking a question that's just as important, if not more so. Okay, so how are we supposed to live in it?
And what's really interesting is that Thales himself was actually part of this group, one of the famous 7 sages of Greece. And these guys, they weren't just thinkers sitting in a room. They were leaders, they were statesmen, and they were all about practical wisdom. Their whole deal wasn't about understanding the cosmos, it was about figuring out the simple rules for living a good, successful life, right here on Earth.
And maybe their most famous piece of advice ever, the one they carved right into the temple of Apollo at Delphi, was just 2 words: know thyself. Think about that. It's pretty much the starting block for all ethics, isn't it? The idea that before you can even begin to understand the world out there, you've got to first understand what's going on in here, your own strengths, your weaknesses, what makes you tick.
Here's another big one from them. Avoid excess. The Greeks had a great phrase for it, medem agan, nothing in excess. For them, the key to a good life was the same as the key to a healthy body or a strong country. Balance, moderation. Don't go too far in any one direction. That was their secret sauce for happiness and being a good person.
Okay, so let's be real for a second. Thales was wrong. The world is not in fact made of water. And Anaximandros' whole apeiron thing, it's a little vague. So why do we even talk about these guys? Why do they matter? Because their real genius wasn't in the answers they came up with. It was in the completely new kind of questions they were brave enough to ask in the first place.
And that is their real legacy. It's this core belief that the universe isn't just some toy for the gods to mess with whenever they're bored. No, it's an ordered, understandable system, a cosmos, as they'd say. They were the first to really believe that reality has a hidden logic, and that our minds, our little human minds, could actually figure it out just by looking and thinking.
So what did they really leave us with? Well, this whole explosion of new ideas basically rewired our entire view of reality. It shifted the big question from who did this to what caused this and how does this work? And it gave us the basic toolkit: observe the world, use your reason, and, this is the really crucial part, let other people challenge your ideas so you can make them better. That, right there, is the tiny seed that grew into the giant tree of modern science and philosophy.
And you know what's wild? That very first question they asked, what is the arche? What is everything made of? We're still asking it today. We just use different words. Is it quarks and leptons? Is it the tiny vibrating strings of string theory? Is it just information? Our tools are unbelievably more advanced. But that fundamental human quest that kicked off in a noisy Greek port city over 2,600 years ago, that drive to understand the universe on its own terms, that's still going strong.